Welcome to the Wall podcast, brought to you by Wall EdTech, where your host, Jared and Kari Wall's passion for technology and learning come together to bring you up-to-date information on what's going on in and out of the classroom. From the latest apps and best practices to current trends, this podcast is Wall to Wall EdTech.
Welcome back to Wall podcast. I'm your host, Kari, and I'm here with my co-host, Jared.
Hello, everyone.
And we are on episode 13. We're going to talk about using Google tools in the classroom. This is our Google Sheets edition. I absolutely love Google Sheets, and I know that Jared does too. But before we get started, let's talk about a little bit of news.
We do have some news and notes. First of all, we want to thank everyone who followed us on Twitter the past 3 weeks and shared one of our podcast episodes via our Twitter or their Twitter feed. We did have a winner of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing, and that was a drum roll.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in some artificial drum roll later. I'm kind of thinking about expanding our podcast to have actual audio sound effects and things. So, one more time, our winner of the $25 gift card is Miss Heather White. Her Twitter handle is @WhiteboardTechie. Heather is a Louisiana teacher and technology integrator. She is using all kinds of technology, and we hope she can use this $25 Amazon gift card for something fun and cool.
Big congratulations to Heather White.
Congrats. All right.
Yeah.
So we're still looking for comments and suggestions on one of our upcoming topics, which is what do you use in your classroom when you are not going to be there? If you have to be off campus for a meeting, you're going to professional development, you're sick, or you're taking one of those emotional vacation days to,
What is it called? What do people call it? A personal health day or something?
Yes, so you're taking a day off for your mental health. If you're not at school, what do you use to teach your class? That's what we want to know. We have a flip grid where you can leave a comment that we can use on our podcast. You want to become famous? Leave us a flip grid, and we will play you on the air. You can also send us a message to our email. You can send it to me, Jared at Wall EdTech, or you can shoot that to Kari at Wall EdTech and let us know the tools you are using. Or you can just tweet it at us on Twitter. You can message it to us on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, we would love to hear from you. Our next contest we want to talk about as well. We're going to run a Christmas contest where we will be giving away a Christmas Goodie Box from Wall EdTech. If you want to enter for a chance to win, and we'll start that as of Monday, November the 12th, and we'll run it until Christmas, which is December 25th, for those of you who are new to life. December 25th will be the end of that contest, and we will draw for a chance to win a Wall EdTech Goodie Box. Now, but here's what you have to do.
Yeah, for doing it, we need you to visit our podcast page on iTunes, Spreaker, or Iheart Radio, and leave us a review of the podcast. We want you to be honest and tell us what you think. Just like our students, we need some feedback as well, and we need to know what's working and what we need to change in order to make this show as effective as possible for you, our listeners. So leave us some feedback, and you will be entered into the Christmas Goodie Box giveaway from Wall EdTech.
I'm a little excited. I may go leave some feedback so I can be entered to win.
Yeah.
Our goodie boxes are pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So with that out of the way, we move to technology tools and trends.
Yeah, and you found a new tool this week that you're pretty pumped about. So
I am. I haven't been able to use it extensively, but I have started playing with it. Saw it on Twitter, and so the name of this app is called JoeZoo, JoeZoo, all one word. And so it is an add-on for Google Docs. It's called JoeZoo Express, I think. And then it also links to an app that you can actually go to on the internet. It's a web app. I use it with my Chromebook. What it is, it's a teacher assessment tool that works in Google Docs. It provides a platform for you to leave typed or spoken comments in student work. So just how you can leave a comment on student work in Google Docs, you type it in and there's a comment on the sidebar. This gives you an opportunity to put in audio comments so kids can listen to your feedback. It also lets you put those typed comments, but it lets students do the text-to-speech on your comments, which isn't actually a function that you can use with comments in Google Docs by itself. Not only this, but it also has an automated grammar and mechanics checker. You hit a button, and it checks for all the common errors. It labels them by color and shows the students and you how many of each of those errors they have, so students can identify where they're missing the mark on grammar or on punctuation or spelling, and they can fix those errors and learn from them. It doesn't automatically correct them, but it does point it out to students so they can go back and fix those problems themselves so they learn. The other thing I like is it has a database of comments that you can, basically a template you can click and say, all right, this is misspelled, or click, one I really liked was, you didn't cite this correctly. You can click a comment box and it automatically adds it. But in that tool, you can add up to 3 links to places where students can look and see how to fix that problem.
So you could link a YouTube video to
Correct.
How to properly cite sources.
Correct. You can link them to MLA formatting guidebook. You could link them to a video or a podcast on whatever they're needing more information on. So I found that to be exciting as well. You can create rubrics and use those to grade. It connects with your Google Classroom, which means it imports all your students and their work, so you don't have to go and look that stuff up. You can just do it right within the app itself. And it will export the grades for those assignments right back into Google Classroom to make your grading easy. So I'm excited about it. Only caveat, if you want to use it for free, you have to send a message to your district administrator who administers your Google for Education accounts, and they have to check some boxes on their end that allow for it to integrate. But they give you a way to send that through the JoeZoo app so they can the district administrator can look at it, see that it's something that's useful, and activate it for all the teachers in your district, and then it's free.
It does a whole bunch of stuff, too.
It's a whole bunch of stuff. We also want to just reiterate another tool, Screencastify, we've talked about before.
Right.
I've been using it lately as a way to give visual feedback on writing. So instead of going through the Google Doc and grading an essay and leaving all the same comments, I have been recording videos and then talking through and showing students on their document with me talking and a little webcam embedded in the bottom what they can do to improve their writing, where they need to focus, and then I share that with them into their a shared folder in their Google Drive so they can go look at my feedback, and it's more something they enjoy going to do to get to watch a video for the feedback.
Right.
But it also is a little more meaningful for them because they can hear me talk about it and I can be more detailed in my feedback.
When students hear your voice, because that's what they're familiar with, I think they're more receptive to what you're saying, to what's being said, rather than just simply reading something. Something I just started this week, in fact, is using voice notes. And I know that sounds so simple, but I do this from my phone in the morning before my students before they come in and I'm getting ready for the day and I'm getting everything set up. I do a voice notes section, and all it is me going through our objective for the day, kind of touching on what the skills that we're going to cover for the day, and kind of going through their agenda, telling them just a reminder, this is what's coming up, as if they were sitting in class. So my students who aren't in class, whether they're suspended or whatever, or if they're at home sick and they know to go to our class website and they have access to all of this, but to hear me actually saying it, I've already had a student say, that helped me so much because I forgot about that part, and because you can't write every detail on your agenda. So
I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's something that I'm going to start using as well. And I think about those hyperdocs we talk about, and the fact that you could save this feedback in a folder where you have your activity in Google, and then put links for each step where you talk in detail about that thing. Even record a summary of what you went over in class that day. That's important. So if a student needs to go backward and reinforce something, or if they don't miss everything, just some great thoughts for using audio in the classroom. And just a quick reminder before we get started, Screencastify is also a free tool. So if you're a teacher and you haven't installed that in your Google Chrome, please go visit Screencastify and start screencasting for free.
Right.
All right, those are some great ideas and some great new tools that we've come across. And now we're moving to the main section of our podcast, which is Google Sheets. And I see, just like the last 2 weeks, our first question is, what is a Google Sheet? For those of you who don't know, Google Sheets is a spreadsheet. If you've ever seen Microsoft Excel, and if you're not a big fan of math or spreadsheets, you may have opened Excel or opened Google Sheets and thought, I will never use this. I don't know what all these boxes are about. I know that's what students tend to think when they see one for the first time. No idea what all of this is about. Let us tell you how fantastic. You are missing out if you're intimidated by Google Sheets. Let us talk about why, and let us ease your fears so that you can start being one of those teachers who work smarter rather than harder.
Right. And I'll start by saying I am not the formula person, the math person, and making all these sheets talk to each other. That's where Jared usually comes in to help me out.
I love that part.
He likes that part. I struggle with it a little bit at times. I'm getting better, and it is my goal to become more efficient with using Google Sheets. But at the moment, I just love the way that I use Google Sheets because it's so much more than just the data part that you're talking about, the math, the formulas and stuff. So, you can collect all kinds of data, but it's a game changer for teachers in so many ways. So how are you using Google Sheets in the classroom?
Well, first of all, let me just say, just like slides that we talked about the week before and docs, when you have a district-administered Google education accounts, you need to be using this because what we're talking about when we say a game changer, we haven't talked about Google Forms yet.
Right.
We will have an episode on Google Forms, but you can set up a Google Form to collect data, and that data can be collected in a Google Sheet. And there's so much you can do with this. So what we're doing in the classroom, first of all, paired with a Google Form, we use Google Sheets for a number of things. First, you can just create a simple quiz for formative assessment in a Google Form and have all of that information shows up in a connected Google Sheet. And now in front of me, after they're done testing, I can see every student, their answer to every question, and I can look at that and analyze it and say, which one of these questions are the students struggling with the most? Where do I need to focus my time? What standard is it we need to go back and work on? So just a simple quiz collected in Google Sheets can do that. Also, I use it as a rubric tool. So I create a Google form that has little check boxes for a rubric when I'm grading an essay or if I'm grading an oral presentation that the kids are given. And it lets me watch what they're doing and check off the little boxes. And when I'm done, my Google Sheet has collected all of my feedback for those students. And then I can share it with them. I can just copy what I need for that group or that student and then share it into their drive so they can see the rubric that I created.
And it's so much easier than having to, write all this stuff out, of course, or even key this information just by clicking on something.
I know you use it as a walk-around tool. You want to talk about that?
I do. I use it, my students have to perform skills. I teach a skills-based business course. And so I use the checkbox feature. So I have my students' names. I have all of the skills for the semester that we're going to cover. And so students always teach my class. I don't do that. And while the student is teaching the class and teaching the other students the skill, it allows me to walk around and have it on my iPad. I just walk around and I'm able to check the box and I can see the student is actually performing that skill and they're performing it correctly. So I can just click the little checkbox next to their name, and it's kind of a quick formative assessment for me to use while the students are actually doing their work in class.
And when she says checkbox, Google Sheets just added this functionality. Right. It's a new tool. But basically in one of those little cells, if you're not familiar with the terminology, you have rows, you have columns, and in each little box that's formed by where a row and a column meet is called a cell. And so in that cell, you can insert a checkbox that you literally click it and it puts a check mark in it. And then that so you can kind of use it like if you ever use a to-do list, you could create a to-do list and check things off. She's using it to say, all right, this skill was demonstrated by that student and check it off. And then she can give a grade based on how many of those skills a student demonstrated. It's a great walk-around tool. It's quick and it's easy. I will also say, and besides the checkbox, one of my favorite features for this kind of thing is that you can enter you can enter data into each cell that is pre-selected, and it makes it a drop-down menu. So if you know you want to, if you have data validation. If you know you want to choose from 3 or 4 different things for each student, like mastered it, basic, proficient. You can go ahead and set that cell up so those are your only options, and it has a little drop down menu, and you just check, was the student, did they master the skill, did they, whatever you want to put there, you can put there, and it makes it so much quicker than you typing things into the box if it's already set up. So check boxes are cool, and that data validation is cool.
Along with a Google form, another way that I really, really like to use it, and it's so beneficial for you, for everyone involved, is I use it as a student accountability form, and then I have my results generated with the Google Sheet. And what I do is, in a Google form, I basically fill it in. I usually, at some point during the day, I kind of take a moment, I reflect back on my class, and if I have a student who was off task, who needed redirecting many times during the class period, things like that. If they were struggling performing a skill, it's a way for me to take like a quick note in a Google form that I already have set up. And whenever I am called into a parent conference, I'm able to use a formula to just see that one student. So it's a good picture overall of what the student is doing in class on particular days. You know, because we've got to track all of these accommodations and things for all of your students. And this is a quick way for me to do it, just by tapping a few little things and being able to have that data, that information to show with a parent, with
Absolutely.
a principal, with a counselor, whoever, or with that student. You know, you want to know why your grade looks like it does. Well, look how many times you've been off task repeatedly throughout the week, or, you know, whatever.
Right.
And it's also, I use it for a positive as well. This student was on task. They were helping other students. They performed the skills correctly today. And you know, I have a little comment section, so if I want to put, you know, they were a rock star today. So I can also track the positive behaviors and be able to show that as well.
Absolutely. And as a whole school, and this takes some knowledge, maybe some advanced knowledge, and we are always here. If you want to send us a message on how to do these, we can make some video tutorials. But as a whole school, at the school we're at currently, I have created spreadsheets that collect student behavior data from every teacher. So we give what's called student infractions. And so there's a Google form where if a student is out of dress code or doesn't have an ID, those things are logged by a teacher in a form. We collect those into a spreadsheet, into a Google Sheet, and then I'm able to use formulas to basically, by student, you can see who has earned a certain number of infractions, if there's disciplinary action that goes with that, is there something that needs to be addressed with that student. And then we went the extra step, and we have created individual Google Sheet, what we call infraction trackers for each student. So that information that comes in from the teachers for that student, they get their own little tracker that says, here's how many infractions you've earned, here are the teachers who gave it to you and what infractions it was, so that they can assess their own behavior throughout the week and the months and see if they're improving or there's something they need to work on.
And so they only see their tracker.
Correct. They only see their tracker.
They can't see anyone else.
And so this is it's only possible with Google Sheets and the collaborative nature of being able to share that information.
Right. Now, all of that we just said is how we use it in connection with the Google Forms.
Correct.
But let's talk about how we do it. How do you use it by itself, just as a standalone Google Sheet?
Absolutely. Well, I use it as a test corrections tracker. Every major assessment I give, I set up a template, and I put the standards that are attached to each question on the test, and then I have my students go through, and they have to tell me, did they get it correct or incorrect? And if they missed it, they have to do a test correction, explain to me what the right answer should have been, why they missed it. And then when the students are done, they can see which of the standards they missed most and which they need to work on. So I use it as a standards and test corrections tracker for standalone for my students.
Okay. One of the ways that I use it is my students have to take certification exams, but for the practice exams, they have to score so many really high scores on their practice ones. So I use it to track their test scores so that we can see, hey, you've got 3 really good scores, and I think you're ready to take a certification test. That's one of the ways that I use it. And of course, I already said about the checkbox. I kind of jumped ahead on that, but that is also a standalone of how I use that there.
Right, and if you have a project you're assigning students, you can set up that project with hyperlinks just like you would in a hyperdoc. Do it in a sheet, but have the little check boxes on the side of each step so that students literally check off when they've done a part of the project. So you as a teacher know, okay, they've completed step 1 and step 2, and that way they're keeping up with where they're at on the project, especially if you're doing something long term over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks and it's taken multiple steps. You can just use it as a way to track that progress as well.
That's a way of holding them accountable and them, the satisfaction of checking something off too.
Absolutely.
So that's cool.
I've used it in a middle school social studies classroom as well to have students create what looks like a web page, because you have all these cells and they filled it with information. So we used it to collect information on each ancient civilization we were studying, and when they were done, they had a tab at the bottom of the sheet that talked about ancient Egypt, and they had a timeline, they had pictures, they had discussions, what they learned about social hierarchy and the types of food they grew in those for those cultures. So you can use it for any of those type of projects as well.
Have I seen you use it in social studies as like a timeline?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Use it to add dates and times and make a timeline out of it is a fantastic use of that.
It's more than just
more
data
than just
collection.
data. Yes.
Yeah. I use it. I like the visual aspect of just that you can set it. Basically, it's a table, but you can set it to look a certain way. I do my lesson plans on a
I meant
Google
to say
sheet.
that as well. We use it for lesson planning, and that's where if you got a lot of standards and skills you track, and
that's that data validation.
Data validate. You can list your standards in that data validation, and then just click which one you want without having to retype.
Yes,
it is a fantastic way to set up your template for your
if you
lesson
are
plans.
Anything like me and very, very OCD, I want it to look a certain way, and I need it to be useful for me, and so that I can use this every day. And so that's one of the ways that Google Sheets allows me to be very OCD.
And neither of us have taken it this far, but while I'm sitting here thinking about it, if you keep up with all those sheets for your lesson plans over time, we could write a formula that says how many times have I taught this standard on my lesson plan. And you could track and say, all right, I have covered this one 10 times, this one 8 times, this one only once, maybe I need to revisit this. And you could set up a formula that would let you know, count if I've done this one, and it would actually count how many times you've planned and taught the standard that you put on that list. So just an idea I thought of while we were sitting here.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Just to speed things along, we're going to talk about how you can collaboratively use Google Sheets with your students. And what I've done in English as an English teacher is a collaborative virtual gallery walk where I set up a template and I have students split into groups, and each student has a row, and the column headers are things that they have to tell me about. So we may have read a piece or a novel or a short story, and they have to identify elements of figurative language, plot elements, theme, tone, and they have to choose at least 3 or 4 of the columns to say something intelligent about with evidence from the story. But they can't repeat anything else that somebody in their group has written. So I've got this spreadsheet where students are working together, basically filling out all these different sections of the spreadsheet with information about the text we covered. And then they can all see what the other one's learning, and then they can share that with the other groups. So just a great activity that lets students work together to basically analyze a text and show what they're learning about it without having to go all around the room and take
That's
paper
cool.
from one place to another.
And we're sitting here talking about this, and I know we're kind of running pressed for time right now because we don't want to make it too long for you, but I've already thought of several different things that I use with Google Sheets that it's not even on this list. And on our list, as we're preparing for our show, on our show notes, we didn't even cover several of these things, but it's so much more. And one thing is when students see all those individual cells, they instantly become overwhelmed. And so one of the things, I was reading about how to kind of introduce spreadsheets to students, and one of the simple, quick, easy ways to kind of get them a little bit more comfortable with it is let them create emojis. And that's something that all students see and they use and everything else. And so that was one of the things that I did. It taught them how to resize the cells, columns, and in spreadsheets, but it also taught them shading and kind of let them play around with it, and it helped them to become a little bit more comfortable. So it's just kind of a quick introduction. This is how we use it in our classroom. Like I said, we didn't even cover everything on the list. Since we've been sitting here, I've thought of several different ways that I use Google Sheets.
So we may have to revisit this and do like one or two major things we're doing with it.
Obviously, this is something we're very passionate about, and we love to mess around with Google Sheets.
And we would love to show you how they work with formulas and can make your life easier. So if you want to send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or our email, we would be happy to sit down with you. We can do Google Chats, Google Hangouts, whatever you have. We can meet with you. You can share a document with us, and we can show you how to make that work. One final thing I want to say about Sheets is I was listening to a podcast. Yes, we listen to educational podcasts whenever we get a chance. We like to be listening to those. And the discussion was about the fact that employers now are looking for certain qualities in the employees they hire. And one of the things those employers is looking for is students who understand and know how to use spreadsheets. They're amazed at how little spreadsheet knowledge there is. And so easy ways, and especially science and math and social studies for sure, put some data about your topic into a spreadsheet and have your students look at the trends in that data, write a story about what they see, and figure out what's going on with that data is a skill that employers are looking for in
just some basic interpretation of the data.
Absolutely. So there's good reasons to teach with a spreadsheet, teach your students to use spreadsheets, and fantastic reasons for you to learn how to use them as a teacher, because you will work smarter. It'll do the work for you.
Not harder.
And, you can watch the data come in, and you can look at the story of how your students are performing rather than trying to figure it out on your own.
Right. So I know I've got to go, but tell us what's happening on our next podcast episode, because we're very excited about this.
So on our next Wall to Wall podcast, we will have an interview with Miss Nikki Laverne with Livingston Parish Schools. And we are so excited to hear her talk about several things. She was just at a conference where I saw pictures on the internet, on Facebook and Twitter, of all of the new furniture that these 21st century schools are starting to use that make the workspaces more intuitive for the kind of teaching we should be doing. I kind of want to hear her talk about that. She's going to talk about her leadership role in Livingston Parish and what they're trying to accomplish with their teachers and technology. And then I know she's passionate to talk about the STEAM Express. And so she will actually be in studio today to record her interview, but it will actually not be aired until next week.
That's right.
And so we will come to you next week with episode 14, and that will be our interview with Miss Nikki Laverne. So we look forward to bringing that to you and to talking to her. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Lots to absorb about Google Sheets, and we know sometimes if you don't know a lot about it, it's hard to understand it. Go look up some videos, shoot us an email, ask us a question. Would love to teach you about it. It's been our pleasure to be with you today. For Kari, this is Jared, and we'll see you next time on Wall to Wall Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Wall to Wall Podcast. You can get all of our podcasts by subscribing to Wall to Wall Podcast on iTunes. For more resources, visit walledtech.com. You can follow us on Twitter or find us on Facebook. Just search for Wall EdTech. If you have questions, comments, or things you want us to talk about, visit Wall EdTech and send us an email, tweet, or message us on Facebook. We look forward to hearing from you.